Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair is hitting theaters, and after all these years, it really is a remarkable feat. I mean, the movie really does toe the line between great and brilliant. If this were an Oscar year, I think it'd be a shoo-in. Quentin Tarantino likes feet. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with my review of Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. Now, if you're not familiar with this movie, it combines Kill Bill Volume 1 and Kill Bill Volume 2 into one movie with a 15-minute intermission between the two parts. There have also been some alterations. The cliffhanger from Part 1 and the recap from Part 2 have been cut. The fight at the House of Blue Leaves is now in color instead of black and white. There's some new animation that was done to further flesh out O-Ren Ishii's backstory. And since this version is unrated, there's also a little bit of extra blood and gore, but not a whole lot. The Whole Bloody Affair also includes, after the credits, an animated short that debuted in Fortnite called The Lost Chapter, Yuki's Revenge, which I'll talk about at the end of the review. Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair has been sort of a thing of legends for most moviegoers for a couple of decades now. Tarantino has not been shy about saying that he believes that Kill Bill 1 and Kill Bill 2 only count as one movie in his filmography because that's how he intended it. He screened this version of the film in some very isolated settings before. He screened it at Cannes back in 2006. He occasionally has had showings at the theaters he owns in Los Angeles, the New Beverly and the Vista. But most movie fans, myself included, probably resigned themselves to the fact that unless they lived in LA, they would never be able to see this cut. But now it is getting a nationwide release, including select screenings in 35mm and 70mm. Unfortunately, the screening I went to was not on film, but I will say that even with digital projection, it still looked great. If you want to see this version of Kill Bill, Quentin Tarantino has been very non-committal when it comes to any sort of streaming release or physical media release. So the safe thing to do is to buy a ticket and see it in theaters now while you can. I saw both Kill Bill movies in theaters when they came out, and I'm a big fan of both, especially Volume 1. I remember back in college literally sitting on coolers in this rundown house in Tallahassee that I rented back in August 2004 before my roommates were there, before any of the furniture had been moved in, watching Kill Bill 1 and 2 back to back when Volume 2 hit DVD. Needless to say, Tarantino's Whole Bloody Affair is a lot more polished than mine. Because the movies themselves haven't really changed that much, I doubt that this will either fix any pre-existing problems or ruin any of the things that you loved about these films, but it does change how the movie feels when you take Volume 1 and 2 and combine it into just Kill Bill. The most substantial change, in my opinion, is a small one, technically, and that's the omission of the spoiler at the end of Part 1. I'm going to bleep it here, Kill Bill style, in case you don't know what it is. Not having Bill say, "Does she know?" changes the context of the entire movie. If you haven't seen it before, it is now a complete shock once we get to the end of what's now Act 2. And I would love to go back and be able to re-experience Kill Bill without knowing that twist beforehand. Because now as an audience, we're no longer ahead of the bride narratively, and it shocks both us and her. I think it's the superior decision when it comes to the storytelling of the film, and I'm sure that it was also one of the concessions that Tarantino made when the movie was split into two 20 years ago. One thing I was curious about was how the movie would feel combined into one film, because Volume 1 and Volume 2 have very different tones. Volume 1 is a bullet train of action and blood, while Volume 2 is a lot slower. It's a lot more contemplative, not boring, but slower. But with the intermission added, I actually think it works. Two tonally different acts aren't uncommon in works of drama, and the second half of Kill Bill does not actually feel out of place, largely because you've had a chance to stretch your legs and maybe grab a soda, go to the bathroom, or just decompress after the Blue Leaves fight and the bride showdown with O-Ren. I'd also just like to say, can we normalize planned intermissions in 3+ hour movies? I know some countries already do them. I sat through Kill Bill and Avatar: Fire and Ash on consecutive nights, and I really would have appreciated a chance to give my eyes and my bladder a rest during Avatar, which is about 3 hours and 15 minutes. And it was also great to just chat with my fellow audience members about what we liked about the movie so far. Now, I've always liked Volume 1 more than Volume 2, which means that I enjoyed Act 1 of The Whole Bloody Affair more than I enjoyed Act 2. I don't think that the second half of the film is bad, I just don't think it's as tight narratively or editorially as the first half. And Kill Bill Act 1 / Volume 1 is one of the best, most successfully stylized pieces of filmmaking of the 21st century. I mean, it just rocks. I can't really think of a more technical term to put it in. It was a delight to see it again on the big screen. I do think that the Blue Leaves fight is more impactful when it's in color and not black and white. It feels like more a part of the narrative and less like a standalone sequence when you don't have that color change. There is a bit of extra blood and gore added as well, since this version of Kill Bill doesn't have to concern itself with passing an MPAA ratings panel. It's unrated. The most substantial change to Act 1 as far as content material is a 7+ minute addition to the animated backstory of O-Ren, where she hunts down the Yakuza boss's main lieutenant. It's an exciting piece of animation. I don't really think it adds anything critical, but it also doesn't take away from the narrative. So if Tarantino always wanted to have it included, I don't really see a problem with that. And given that the animation, I assume, was done years after the original Kill Bill was released, it also fits in seamlessly, stylistically, with the rest. Volume 2 / Act 2 is basically untouched, apart from the omission of the prologue. While not including that prologue was the right choice, it also gets rid of one of Uma Thurman's most iconic moments when she says,
"I am gonna kill Bill."
I'm going to be honest, I was always kind of a doubter when it came to whether Kill Bill would work as one movie. I just thought the parts were too different. And I don't want to say that I didn't believe Tarantino when he said that he always intended Kill Bill to be one movie, but I just didn't see how it could be effective. However, seeing both volumes combined, I will openly admit that I was wrong. The changes in how the movie and the story are presented may be small, but they work, and the movie does flow as one narrative. Quentin Tarantino has said forever that this is the version of the movie that he wanted to make, and honestly, I see why. I believe that this is the definitive version of Kill Bill, not just an alternate cut, and I hope that it does someday become available for people like me to own. Quentin Tarantino now owns the rights to the movie. That's one of the reasons this is now coming out in theaters, so I would love to see him team up with a specialty distributor like Criterion or Arrow to produce a disc for collectors who want to own what is really his final version of this movie. I would be a day one buyer, and I would probably still go see it again in a theater if I had the chance. Watching all of Kill Bill again, it also just underscores how criminal it is that Uma Thurman did not get Academy recognition for her performance as the bride, and that neither Lucy Liu nor David Carradine, it seems, got consideration as well. Those are the three performances that stand out the most in the film, although the movies are packed with awesome performances, and Uma Thurman in particular is great. The bride gets put through the ringer, physically and emotionally, in this movie, and Thurman was able to execute the physical demands of the role, which were not insubstantial, the humor and heartache of her character, and she also crafted an icon that still endures. I also forgot how much I enjoyed Daryl Hannah as Elle Driver, who really has to be one of the most heartless villains in movie history, and the dual oddball performances of the late Michael Parks, particularly his Mexican pimp Esteban in Act 2. With Kill Bill as two separate movies, Quentin Tarantino had 10 films to his name as a director. He now counts both volumes as his fourth movie, which means that he now has 9 movies. Inglourious Basterds has long been and still is my favorite Tarantino film, and the number 2 spot has always been kind of up for grabs. It just kind of depends on the day, and Kill Bill Volume 1 is one of those movies that was in the mix. Now that I've seen The Whole Bloody Affair with Volume 1 and Volume 2 combined, I think I can safely say now that a combined Kill Bill is my second favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. Not that there isn't tough competition. I know that he gets a lot of flack and a lot of accusations for being a pastiche artist, just stealing bits from other movies and making them his own. But that doesn't really come into play with Tarantino when we talk about the character of the bride, which he crafted with Thurman, the scenarios that he concocted for this film, the dialogue, the incredible action filmmaking, and Tarantino's own stylistic touches. You are more than free to call Kill Bill a remix, and I think those accusations might stick a little bit, but you have to admit that if it is a remix, it is one hell of a remix and a lot of fun to watch. If you haven't seen Kill Bill before, I envy you because I think that this is the perfect way to see it for the first time. If you have seen Kill Bill as 2 volumes, I think you should go see this because it's like seeing it for the first time. And even if you've seen both volumes 100 times, it's still a blast to see Kill Bill again on the big screen with the soundtrack pumping and an energetic crowd. If you want to be reminded why we go to the movies, Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair is a great reminder. So no shocker, I'm giving it a see it now rating. I don't think this is just a stunt. I do think that the movie is improved by putting it all together in one. And after the credits, you can also check out The Lost Chapter, Yuki's Revenge, an animated short which had a Fortnite exclusive debut. Quentin Tarantino has said that this was cut from the script for time and budgetary reasons. It's about 10 minutes long, and the short takes place after the bride's fight with Vernita Green in California and features Gogo Yubari's sister Yuki tracking the bride down with a huge gunfight ensuing. Even if this had been made in live action, let's say 20 years ago, I still think it would be completely superfluous to the story. Honestly, I don't think it should have been filmed and was probably an easy cut when they were trying to get the budget down. The most notable thing about this short is that it reunites Uma Thurman, who voices the bride, Tarantino, who of course originally wrote it and also voices Bill since David Carradine sadly has passed away, and Uma Thurman's stunt double Zoe Bell, who did motion capture for the action in the short. Without the Fortnite association, I think that this would have merely been skippable, but it's downright bizarre to see a quote-unquote official part of the Kill Bill story take place in the Fortnite world, where guys dressed as bananas try to join the fight and people don't bleed when they're shot, they glow. And no, I don't play Fortnite, can you tell? I also think it's a real commentary on our society and our culture that Fortnite, which is a game largely marketed to children and teens, where they shoot at each other with guns and rocket launchers, obviously felt that the word had to be removed from the back of the wagon. Of course, I just bleeped it so I don't get demonetized, so I guess I'm part of the same system, but still, it's weird. I think any edge that this might have had was taken away by being an official Fortnite collaboration. Tarantino just is not the same with the edges sanded off. I totally get it from a marketing and a publicity standpoint. It was probably a very business savvy move, but I don't really get it from a film purist standpoint, which is where Quentin Tarantino often resides. The end credits of A Whole Bloody Affair are quite long, and if you're tired or you just need to get home after a 4.5-hour movie, I don't think it's essential to stay and watch The Lost Chapter in theaters. If you're a completionist, I guess it's interesting enough, but I'm glad the movie itself didn't have these kinds of additions because otherwise it would have felt a lot longer than it already does. So those are my thoughts on Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. What do you think? Are you going to be heading out to see it in theaters? Have you been anticipating it as much as I have? This really was just a legend and a rumor for so many years. Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, stay tuned right here for the latest in movie news, reviews, box office, and more. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.